Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel for yet another Chelsea transfer special with a person who's kind of turned himself into a bit of a transfer specialist, really. I mean, it didn't start off so well, as Felix knows better than anybody else, with the whole Enzo Fernandez debacle. But he didn't really have as much of a debacle as people like to make it out to be. But as you know, the internet works how it works. But since then, if you ask me at least, I think every week, really, you kind of you're putting things out there that always turn out to be true. So people have certainly less and less spaces to question you on, I would say. So I'm really excited to have you on and just share a bit of thoughts, really, because I'm not just going to sit here and quiz Felix on all the insights because, he's not Fabrizio Romano. He has other things to do as well. But we talk back and forth. We're going to have a bit of a chat. Felix, first of all, thank you for being back on. I think this is the second time you're coming on. I can't really remember, if I'm perfectly honest.
I don't know. It's been a while because I've been a bit busy over the last couple of months, but we agreed I'd come back on in the summer, so I'm happy to be here.
Exactly. So here we are, mate. How's it been the last few months? Obviously, since that Enzo stuff that happened for you, but it still put you on a different kind of position within the Chelsea fan base, I guess. And then ever since then, you've kind of been working really hard to get more and more exclusive out there. How has that been for you, mate?
Yeah, it's been weird. Enzo was the weirdest thing in the world because obviously I did get it wrong in theory because it wasn't done. But a lot of people will know that it was quite weird. We did pull out of it at our last situation. And I know personally that what I said wasn't wrong. So it was quite a hard thing to navigate. But yeah, the whole space is hard. I don't really enjoy doing it, to be honest. So now especially like today, I posted 2 exclusives here, but I haven't posted one for a week. I'm kind of just chilling. And if I get something that I'm 100% confirmed on, I'll post it. If not, I'm still a fan account. And I think people should realize that. I also don't claim to be Fabrizio and Ornstein. No. These guys are different level. And I don't even try and compare. So yeah, I'm just doing my own thing and I enjoy it.
Exactly. And I think people need to respect and appreciate that a bit more as well. Obviously, once you put exclusive at the beginning of a tweet, people start to only see that, I guess. But that's the important thing. Just because you hear something doesn't mean you claim to be Fabrizio now, right? But, I honestly, I can't even imagine how that Enzo stuff must have been. Can't have been easy, I won't lie. But here we are still. Chelsea's in a different sphere, I would say, than we were in last season. Because last season, I'm sure you will agree, was just misery. From top to bottom, there wasn't really much good happening, aside from, I guess, maybe signing Enzo and a couple others in January. But otherwise, nothing much good happened. But this preseason, we've already kind of managed to turn things around. Obviously, it doesn't mean anything in terms of results. But how have you felt preseason has gone under Poch taking over? Obviously, a few of the new signings already coming in, but still missing a few pieces in particular. Obviously, Caicedo, we'll get to that in a minute as well. But how have you felt preseason has gone? Does it already feel like a new page of Chelsea to you, or is there still kind of a ways to go to get to that?
It's been so refreshing. I think it's been a completely new Chelsea. I don't have any expectations for next season. I'm not even thinking like what I even want to achieve next season. Probably just a trophy in general of any kind would just be cool. But it is the biggest change from last season because last season, all over the place, no semblance of a style of play, zero care about playing. No one played for the badge. Even that first game versus Wrexham, which didn't matter at all. You could just see the players running after the ball, and that meant so much. And you can just see the vibe in the camp. I spoke to one of the players that was there, and I was like, it looks really good there. And he was like, bro, it's so good. We love it. We absolutely love it. And last season, they weren't saying the same thing. They were just like, yeah, I'm just here, just chilling. Like, it's a really good vibe. Poch has got them working, and that's what I want to see. And there is a style of play. That's one thing. I was really excited when Poch came in. And the one thing I had question marks about just in general was how good of a manager actually is he? That sounds kind of rude, but it was just like, you look at Pep, you're like, oh, he does that. I wasn't sure what does he actually do, but we've already got stuff going. And I think he's also modernized his game from what I saw at Spurs, especially with the fullbacks. He's definitely learned over his time. So I'm really excited. And yeah, he came from Spurs, but he gets Chelsea. He doesn't question what the attitude is. It's always just winning. And I love to hear that. It's simple things, but it matters.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And people try to paint me in a kind of as being this negative guy sometimes, but this whole Poch and talking about winning and everything else, because he says the right thing every time. Every time he's spoken, whether it's press conferences, interviews, whatever he's done and said, it's always kind of been spot on. So I've almost sat there and I'm like, compared to especially the last few years, I'm like, is he just smart and knows exactly what we want to hear? Because, well, everybody learned what we don't want to hear through Potter, I guess. And is he just intelligent enough to know, okay, let me just say that, so then they'll come on my side? Or is that actually him? I don't know. Because now, what I read yesterday through the Atletico, was it this morning, when he's like, well, yeah, we need to win now, but obviously there's still a process. I'm like, okay, now I can, that felt more like an honest statement than, yeah, obviously we're trying to win all of everything, right now. I'm like, okay, sure, that's the aim, but you need to be some sort of realism around it as well. But you touched on the vibe in the camp, and obviously I'm not going to quiz you on that too much, but I still find it really interesting as well, because wasn't there this clip or these quotes from Kovacic going around as well, who apparently was so surprised how everybody is getting on so well at Man City. And I'm like, that doesn't exactly sound great for how it was with us before then. Now, obviously, Kovacic was at Real Madrid and the Inter before that too. But still, I still never really understand how we came to that. Was it already not a nice place to be when Tuchel was here? Because Potter might be a great manager, but to me, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would create a bad vibe. So I mean, I'm not asking if you have any insight, but what's your opinion on that? Like, how have we even come to that it was not that nice of a place to be around, at least seemingly? We don't know for sure, do we?
Yeah, I mean, you never really know what goes on behind the scenes, no matter how many people you speak to, because you're not there every day. I'd say with Potter, and this is mostly just from listening to other people, it was literally 15 out of a 35-man squad that didn't want to be there. Like, they never played. They were Lampard. I listened to a podcast of Lampard. He was on Diary CEO, I think, and he was just saying it was impossible for me. No matter what you think of Lampard, he was like, I had to go up to 10 people, beg them to train as hard as they could for the last 10 games of the season, and tell them you're not even in the squad. It was an impossible situation. So I reckon, no matter how good Potter is at his bloody emotional intelligence, that he has a degree in, apparently, he was the one who let it get that bad. But I think form basically eventually overrides feeling. Also, City is almost like a robot. Like, they've manufactured an incredible system. Not only is the vibe there great, but I can imagine that you say one thing and like 10 people are coming up to you, like trying to, get the energy up there, being like, we got to win. So I wonder. Also, the Tuchel thing is interesting because last preseason, we've all heard stuff. It really just wasn't good last preseason. I've heard it more from the end of, I saw the performances, which were absolutely terrible. I saw us neglect positions. I've heard it more from the academy end by speaking to people over there, because I've got some links there. And I know there was a lot of weird stuff going on there, but I can't speak to the general squad, which, to be fair to Tuchel, he always seemed to have a good relationship with his core group, especially someone like Kovacic. So I don't know. I feel like that's a bit weird. But City are just a robot, and hopefully we become that robot, because we need to start winning and get a good mentality.
Yeah, and that's the difficult part. I mean, obviously, we all want to strive and win, to win the Premier League eventually. Obviously, the sooner the better. But I don't know. It just feels like while Pep's there, no one but City is going to win that league. But we can just hope he leaves soon, I guess.
Yeah, no, as I said, I don't really have expectations for this season. I feel like if I had to set them, I'd say top 4 and a trophy, but I really would like a trophy just to see one back at Chelsea. But the title it seems so far off, and we need Pep to retire, really. Otherwise, we've got no chance. But then you've got Arteta copying every single move he does. So maybe that's 2.0 there. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it is. But hey, usually copies don't work out quite as well as the original. I reckon we just get into some of the news that has come out, today and yesterday and whatever else. This move of Robert Sanchez, we have officially signed a new goalkeeper. Now, I will bring up a tweet of yours on this topic in a little bit as well. But what do you make of this? We were going back and forth for a minute the other day as well. We were talking like, how good is Sanchez? Is he better than Kepa? Is he not? You said he's ever so slightly better in your mind. I said they're about the same, but Kepa's more experienced. Therefore, I'd probably still put Kepa slightly ahead. Regardless of which way exactly you see it, I think we can all agree it's pretty marginal, whether he's slightly better, slightly worse, or the same. So what do you then make of the move, especially the fact that he signed on a 7-year deal, which, now that the amortization isn't possible over 5 years anymore, I don't fully understand the point of tying him down until he's 32, if I'm being perfectly honest, but maybe they have some sort of plan behind it. But in general, what do you make of that deal? And both your opinion and your level of information, if you have any, what do you expect the situation in terms of who starts in goal to be? Like, obviously, Liverpool in a week's time. I personally expect it to be Kepa. I think it's probably going to be Kepa, but how do we proceed after that?
Yeah, well, I think it's a thing with these transfers that I'd say 90% of people And you could see it with Arsenal fans for Havertz. They see a transfer rumour. You see their actual opinion on the player. And then in a week or so, they've convinced themselves they like the move. So I'm going to be like honest with this. And even though I have my thoughts on him and I'll give it, it's a very underwhelming move. And I really wish that Chelsea, and I've wished this for a month since it became clear this is the strategy, that Chelsea just splashed money on a goalkeeper, because I really don't rate Kepa. And I think that it's worthwhile just splashing money on a number one, like Onana. That would have been my person. So for me, it's slightly underwhelming. However, I have watched a lot of Brighton over the years for various reasons. I liked Graham Potter before he came to Chelsea. Don't ask me why. I liked Levi Colwill, Caicedo, Lamptey. I liked watching them. And I've watched Sanchez a lot. And what I say is he can be he will make a couple terrible mistakes at Chelsea. Like, he has the bozo gene to the highest degree.
What kind of mistakes are you then alluding to, or all different kinds?
Like flapping at crosses, but like not like Kepa at Newcastle. Like, it's an easy one to pick up and then he'll just drop it. So it's less concerning because I feel like he's not that bad on corners, but it will just happen once. Probably on the ball a couple of times it will happen too, although I don't think I've seen that personally. But what I will say is he's 6'6", and that matters, or 6'5", whatever. That really matters because Kepa's not at all. And also, first of all, his interview, I don't like to talk about aura, but he wasn't like shying down. He was talking himself up. So I like to see that. He is good on the ball. So a lot of people won't understand this, and they'll see Jason Steele, who doesn't sound like a sexy goalkeeper. But this guy is incredible on the ball. Like, honestly, he's sensational. He's very good short passing, but his long passing, I watched one of their preseason games, not against Chelsea, and 3 times in one half, he played their left winger completely through on goal from his own box, right? So yes, I still think he's very good on the ball. He's just not quite Jason Steele. So I do think you'll see an upgrade on the ball, especially long passing. He's got a great long pass on him. Short passing will want to improve. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with the goalkeeper coaches, because we still have Ben Roberts, who was the Brighton goalkeeper coach, but it doesn't seem like he's actually a goalkeeper coach. It seems that he's working upstairs in terms of recruitment.
Yeah,
so
kind of what Christoph Lolichon used to do, right?
Exactly, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how much influence he has there. You'd assume he's giving advice to Tony Jimenez. But yeah, in terms of Liverpool, and also in terms of what I've heard, and as you know, I mean, as you can think about, in terms of journalism, I'm not a journalist. I don't work for anyone. So when people say Chelsea briefing, you don't need to worry about that with me. You cannot believe what I say, but I'm not getting a briefing from Chelsea, or I have no idea what that even means. But what I've been told is that Chelsea do genuinely see him as a future number one, and he's really highly rated. Whether you agree with that or not, and it will obviously be just off how he performs, but they do genuinely see him as a number one. So that 7-year contract, from Chelsea's point of view, I guess isn't bad in that case if they really, really think he will be. But in my opinion, I still think it's mental. I don't understand what's the point of giving someone more than 5 years unless they're Levi Colwill or you're trying to amortize their contract. Because not only could they not be great, but also if they get injured, then you've lost all value and you've got to keep them for ages. Now, the good thing is we have a new wage structure, so we probably won't be held to ransom for those 7 years, but I do think it's crazy. Last thing, in terms of Liverpool, I would 100% think that Kepa's going to start, just because pre-season has all been with Kepa, so I don't think you can change it too much. I think you wait for a slightly easier game, play Sanchez, and then see from there. But I wouldn't be so. I would guess that by the end of the season, or even towards Christmas, I would think that Sanchez is being phased in, because I have also been told that Pochettino is not a fan of Kepa's distribution, and surely he can't be a fan of him flapping at a cross versus Newcastle either. So it'll be interesting to see. But I'm kind of excited, but also wish that we'd gone a bit bigger. So.
Yeah, it's a whole weird one, isn't it? Because, and I have no problem with Axel Disasi in itself, but we were happy to spend 45 million euros on Axel Disasi, but we weren't willing to spend, what did United in the end pay for Onana? 55 million euros? Like 10 million more for a goal. Like, we didn't even know we needed Disasi at the time when deciding Onana was too expensive. So I just don't really understand that. Now, what I find a bit strange, and I'm not questioning what everybody's saying, but what I find a bit strange is this whole playing out from the back situation. Because when we signed Kepa back in 2019, obviously we wanted Alisson, we didn't get him, we all know that story. But then kind of Kepa was our next choice, whatever you make of that. But essentially the main reason why we did that, obviously because Courtois forced his move, but also we need a new goalie. Sarri wanted a goalie that was good at playing out from the back. So Kepa is supposed to be that. So that's why, like, how much better am I supposed to be expecting from Sanchez? Like, obviously this is now a bit subjective, I guess, because they haven't played in the same team, so it's difficult to directly compare. But I've personally never really thought of Kepa as his distribution being the issue. Now, sure, sometimes I wish he could punt it a bit longer. I also wish that for Mendy, with Mendy, it always felt like he barely could get it to the halfway line. I'm like, yeah, we had Lukaku up top for that one half a season, but the ball never even got to it when Mendy was in goal. But I don't really know how much more I'm supposed to expect. Like I say, I've not really felt that Kepa's playing out from the back has been an issue. Sure, every now and again a mistake happens, but every now and again a mistake happens to Enzo when trying to pass. Passing is like, not every pass is going to be perfect no matter who you are. But how much better do you expect him to be in that aspect of the game? Obviously, the long ranges, they will hopefully, stop. He's 6'6". That's certainly the biggest advantage. I guess maybe from close range, Kepa will have a few advantages over Sanchez, but especially about the distribution, I just don't really know why or where it comes from that he's so much better than Kepa.
Yeah, I mean, it is subjective, and we'll have to see. I will have to slightly disagree. As I think Kepa's distribution is a really big problem. I think he's very bad personally.
But have you always thought that, or has it become bad?
No, so I've always thought that. However, I would talk about it less because I have problems with other stuff more. And also, like, for example, under Tuchel, he wasn't playing that much. Under Lampard, we weren't playing that well. So it wasn't something you really noticed. It was more like, can he actually save the ball? But especially over the last couple of months, I've noticed it. One, because he can't clip it to the fullbacks. Like, I think he's very, very bad at clipping into the fullbacks, which I think is something that got every single goalkeeper to be able to do. And this is my biggest problem, because sometimes he does clip it fine. My biggest problem is him going long, and maybe this is just adjusting to the defenders, but we saw it last season as well. So this has been 2 preseason games now that he's played with Levi Colwill next to him, and also Thiago Silva, by the way. Like, they're both elite on the ball. And the amount of times he hoofed the ball to Nkunku up top, and one game it was Jackson, so he dealt with it better. But you still never really want to be hoofing the ball up aimlessly. It really, really annoyed me, because you have elite players to your side. And as I said, I watched a lot of Brighton last season, and I'd watch their goalkeeper just keep the ball, hold it for like 10 seconds, and then pass off the centre backs, and it'd be so composed, and everything would improve. I honestly think it would add so much to our team to have someone who can do that. Although I wouldn't say Robert Sanchez is absolutely perfect there. I think with Sanchez, you get the long ball, and I really would watch a goal. I would bet on one goal where he just boots it to Mudryk, who runs in behind and he scores. But I do think that will happen. But I guess that is just a small point. But yeah, it's the short passing that I really want to see if it's better. Can he clip it to the fullbacks? Because I think that's such an important thing. Like, hitting it out from clipping it to the fullbacks is so lazy to me. I think you have to be able to do that. And also to generally have the composure to just stop and roll it to your centre backs and trust your centre backs to play the ball, because they're absolutely elite on the ball either side of you. So yeah, I mean, it's more just to see how good he is. But from watching Sanchez, I would say he's better. But I would definitely say his long passing is much better than Kepa's. But his short passing, I think I kind of have to wait and see, because when I've watched him, I haven't watched the short passing and been like, he's elite. He's brilliant at that. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, that is interesting. The clipping to the fullbacks I found very interesting, because I feel like to the left back, he can do it when it's kind of like, when he, because Kepa's right-footed, that kind of direction seems to be more comfortable for him. To the right back, he never does that, or basically never does it. And if they do, I feel like he always makes Reece stretch for it a good bit. But make of that what you will, I guess. Yeah, it's an interesting one. We'll just have to wait and see how it goes, really. But hey, if it has always annoyed me. I'm like, we have these fast players. There's clearly opportunity to hit on the counter. What if a goalie can play a ball like Neuer can throw a ball? Just bloody do it, man. I never really 100%. Understand why they don't. But yeah, I am in agreement with what you said earlier. Like, if they think of him as at number one, I think this is incredibly underwhelming. See, my perspective was when we signed him, I'm like, okay, if it's aimed as competition and aimed as most likely being number 2 once Kepa leaves and we sign someone proper, then I like this, because then this is a good backup, a good competition. I understand it. But if the aim is for him to potentially or even likely become the number 1, whether that's this season or next season, I just find that a bit ridiculous. Like, you spend so much money for such different kinds of players. I mean, how many 18-year-olds have we signed for crazy money? And there's nothing wrong with that. But just take 2 out of those and you could double the money you pay for a goalie. I know it's a different budget, but
no, not that. I think it's worth saying just quickly, not on the 18-year-old thing. I think you're right. It's different budget, but it's still money. Like, it's actually quite a lot of money. But what I would say not in terms of helping Sanchez's case, but maybe why Chelsea didn't go for a number one, and we should. It shows why Chelsea are a bit hamstrung is the fact that they couldn't really sell Kepa.
Yeah.
There's no interested club in Kepa, and his wages are really high. And I've heard this from Alex, and I've heard it myself from other people, and it's a fair point. Chelsea are trying to improve their wage structure, and they can't have a number two on number one wages because then people come in. So, for example, the reason why, and I was saying this throughout the whole summer, whether Chelsea get a striker or not, they cannot get a striker until Lukaku and Aubameyang leave because they need their wages off the books, which sounds silly because it's not like we can't afford it. They're just saying we can't have a striker still here in the squad, not guaranteed he's going to leave and be on way more than everyone else, but also not playing. It doesn't help our structure. So maybe that explains why they couldn't go for a full-on number one, because they couldn't have Kepa being the guaranteed number two on huge wages. It's an interesting situation. Either way, I feel like I'm still underwhelmed, but I'm very happy for Robert Sanchez to suddenly become Neuer and prove me wrong. So that's
yeah, exactly. No, and I do agree with that, and I have heard that myself as well. On the one hand, I'm like, well, if you bought a proper number one and made Kepa the number two, and then if someone complains, then you can just tell them, well, yeah, we know Kepa's on a lot of wages, but he's been here for 5 years, and we've tried to get rid of him, and we couldn't. That's why he's still on.
That's what I feel like you could do. It's an interesting.
Yeah, just tell them like we want to get rid of him anyway.
You can just explain it. Yeah.
I do find that a bit strange, but even still, like I say, the whole Sanchez signing makes sense to me if you didn't plan to essentially eventually, whenever you find somewhere to send Kepa off to, or I guess in 2 years his contract runs out, then you sign a higher level goalie. And then Sanchez becomes your backup. So then that makes sense to me. And I'm like, okay, you do a stopgap backup / competition in Sanchez, fair enough. And then once you have managed to get rid of Kepa, you sign someone, a proper number one. I get that. But if then Sanchez becomes the number one, what was the whole point? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I feel like the pathway is open. I reckon, and I've no idea, but I reckon his wages aren't that high that he could feasibly be a number two. So I reckon the pathway is open for us to get another goalkeeper and him to stay as a number two. But at the same time, why would you put him on a 7-year contract then? Because
exactly.
Then you're hamstring yourself. So I don't know. It's a weird situation. We've got to see how it plays out, as we've said.
Yeah, exactly. We'll probably need another 2 or 3 years until we can really make a judgment of whether these, maybe even 7 years, until we see whether all these 7-year contracts were a good or a bad idea, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, at the end of the day, he seems like a good guy as well. I've never heard a Spanish person speak English so well. I know he's been at Brighton since he's like 17, so it makes sense. But still, I don't think I've ever seen a Spanish person speak English so well. So fair play to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the end of the day, let's just see how it goes. And if Kepa flops, we give Sanchez a chance, and then we hope he doesn't flop, because otherwise we're just miserable again. And none of us really want that. I guess we might as well phase this into what I wanted to talk about with Moises Caicedo as well. So your tweet from a couple of days ago was when the whole Sanchez thing was kind of, first broken as news by David Ornstein, you quote tweeted that with a picture of Sanchez and Caicedo. I'm not trying to read too much into it, but I thought it'd fit the conversation, so I thought I'd bring this forward now. First of all, what is your level of information on the Caicedo situation right now? And second of all, do you think Sanchez will have anything to do with the Caicedo deal happening? Because obviously everybody made up these, I don't know if it's made up or if it's genuine theories, but the whole, the sell-on clause that Independiente have for Caicedo. So, if we somehow murk things around with the numbers, Brighton are allowed to keep more of the money. But then would the Sanchez deal have gone through so quickly? I don't know. Is it just to build the relationship, make it even better because we took someone off their books who they really wanted to get rid of? I don't know. But at this point, I've been very critical of this. I'm not sure if you've been critical of it at all, but I've been critical of it. I'm like, Mr. Winstanley, you literally worked for these lot until a year ago. How you've tried to sign him in January. I'm not sure if it was Winstanley at the time, but still, Chelsea tried to sign him in January until we pulled out again. And then we've been working on this on a player side since April, May, and then on a club side since June. And now it's the 5th of August, and we still really seem no closer to getting it done than we did in June. And I just don't understand how that can happen. Now, I understand some deals take a long time, but I don't understand when everybody knows it's going to take between 80 and 100 million, what we're doing with multiple bids under the 70 million first. Like, what was the aim? Like, what was that ever going to achieve? Yeah. I don't think anything. But at this point, do you think the Caicedo deal will still happen? Do you think it won't? Where do you stand on it all?
Yeah, well, firstly, You'd be surprised how hard it is to find a picture of Robert Sanchez and Caicedo together. That took me about 15 minutes to find one. And that is a terrible photo in itself. Like, I only found one and it was like fully covered by a watermark. And then anyway, so that was hard in itself. The reason why I posted that, I mean, obviously I'm not saying anything too crazy. It's just because I'd spoken with someone that morning and they'd said that it's not a package deal. Chelsea did think to do a package deal. And I saw Fabrizio said that on his YouTube too, but it just didn't work because they weren't near the valuation of Caicedo, but they were with Sanchez. And I mean, this is obvious. It's not really crazy, but Chelsea do think, and when Stanley specifically, and it was he was the one who launched the strategy to go for Sanchez, that getting Sanchez will help ease negotiations for Caicedo. Now you have to be careful saying that because it's Brighton and he has no idea if he'll actually use negotiations. I mean, what does that even mean? But taking a player off their books that they didn't want, and they really didn't want him. So last season, I would listen to every De Zerbi press conference last season because I was running the loan account. So I was looking for quotes on Cole. So I know the Sanchez situation quite a lot, and it's very deep. Like he got dropped for steal. He caused dressing room problems. He got dropped from the whole squad in around for like 2 months up until the end of the season. So they really, really did want to get rid of him. Like they were desperate to get rid of him. So we have done them a favor. He was probably on decently high wages. With Caicedo, I haven't actually spoken to anyone about it for I think a day and a half now. But what the situation that I got told is that basically, first of all, and it's stupid, but Chelsea feel like they're close and they also are very, very confident. But they have been the whole summer. Like I spoke to some people at Chelsea, and some of them speak of Caicedo as someone who's already their player. Like when they're talking through the squads, they add Caicedo into it. Now that is not something to report. It's just like an interesting thing, right? It doesn't really mean anything. But what I say with Caicedo is that firstly, what we were talking about with the asking price. What Brighton have said is it's 100 million if you want to pay in 4 installments, because Chelsea have been trying to pay everything in 4 installments, or it's an 85 million all up front. And the situation right now is, and I think there's already been a bit of movement, but as I said, I haven't checked for the last day and a half, is that Chelsea need/want Caicedo's camp and Caicedo himself to do a bit of pushing before they put in their next bid. They are completely planning on putting their next bid in, but they're not putting it in until Caicedo himself has done something with Brighton to try and show his intent to want to leave, because it might be one of the last bids that Chelsea do. So they kind of need Caicedo to go full in now. So that's something I'd watch. I have seen different reports from different people saying that they've had meetings with Brighton. So it seems like they're already doing stuff. I think Nathan Gissing reported that Caicedo's agent flew to America while they were there just to speak to them. So it does seem like there's movement happening. So all I'll say is Chelsea seem confident for some reason. They are trying to get his side to push a bit of Brighton, and then they are going to put in that last bid. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. It's a crazy saga, and no one really knows what's going to happen.
It really is a crazy saga. But when I hear that, I'm like, we're waiting for Caicedo to make a push. I'm like, well, but how long are we waiting for then? Because the last bid is now a week ago now, or whatever it was. When that £80 million bid that so instantly got rejected, which is another thing where I'm like, how? Like, how is it just instantly rejected? Like, what did you try in installments? Like, give them 5 million this year and the next in 5 years' time? Like, what were you trying? How can they instantly reject 80 million after they have apparently promised him that he was allowed to leave? I mean, I think Caicedo has probably by now also realized that it was probably a mistake to sign that extension in January. But, you know, people make mistakes, I guess. But do you expect that push from the Caicedo camp to come at some point? Because I mean, if it doesn't come now, when will it come? Because I doubt he's going to make that push once the Premier League has started. Because as much as he wants to leave, well, he might do it. But surely it's better to do it a week before than once the Premier's kicked off and around the first game. Because as much as he wants to leave, I don't think he has any bad blood towards Brighton. So why would you cause any drama as actual competitive games have started? So surely you do it a week beforehand. But it hasn't happened so far, has it?
Yeah, I mean, I was told they would push. And I mean, and also, it's been very well reported, which is obviously true, that Caicedo really wants to join. There was even that report that he was telling people at Brighton's trophy ceremony that he wants to join. So it's not a secret that he wants to join Chelsea. I wonder whether a transfer request is really possible here. I was told not to rule it out about a week ago, but that, again, means nothing not to rule it out. Like, that's an irrelevant thing to say. But I wonder whether he's slightly against doing that because he did it in January. Like, he'd really burn a bridge with the Brighton fans if he did that. And also he's probably wondering whether it's that effective. So it will be really interesting to see what he does. But I do kind of agree with you. I mean, why would you wait and do it now when it's the same thing if you'd done it a week ago? The only reason maybe is Chelsea were like, right, we're ready to bid in a week. Because, I mean, this is quite a lot of money we're talking about. They have to prepare it in some way, right? They don't just get it out of thin air. So they would have to prepare the bid. So maybe
they get it out of thin air for the 18-year-olds, it seems.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. But like, if we're planning to bid and we're like, this is seriously our last bid, so let us take a bit of time. We have to do the Disasi deal because that was urgent. Ugochukwu also happened during that, but Disasi was urgent because of Fofana. Sanchez also was urgent because the season's starting. So, and also Sanchez was meant to ease negotiations. So they've now taken someone off their books. I feel like hopefully going into next week, if you don't see movement next week, I don't really know what's going to happen. Like, I feel like you need to see that Caicedo movement. And also, by the way, you might not hear about that Caicedo movement because it'll be an internal thing. I mean, I'm sure stuff gets out all the time and Brighton will brief their
but
side.
Usually a few days delayed, right? So
Exactly. So, yeah, I'd wait for that. But I feel like surely a bid will come in next week and hopefully Caicedo will push. My personal feeling is he will come, firstly, just from speaking to people. Like, I feel like they're confident for a reason. And the second thing, I feel like it will get done around that £85 million mark, maybe 85 million plus 5. But it's about the installments package. So I'm hoping that Caicedo's push will allow for that £85 million mark to not be a flat fee, because that is ridiculous. And there is a gentleman's agreement between Caicedo and Brighton where the De Zerbi wants to pretend there's not. Right? He did say you'll leave for a fair price. Caicedo is an idiot for believing that, but he did say it. So I feel like they will ease that installments package, and Chelsea maybe add a 5 million onto that in add-ons, and they kind of meet in the middle. And it's not even in the middle; it's 90% Brighton, but we'll take that one negotiating with Brighton. So it'll be interesting to see. I just need to see that push from Caicedo, and then I think a bid will come in. It kind of makes sense now that I thought about it, the fact we did Disasi, Sanchez. But if nothing happens now for like 5 days or like in the next week, then it doesn't really make sense. And that's when I probably start coming back to reality. And I'm like, maybe Chelsea really did just get this wrong and they just misjudged it. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I think we misjudged it for not. I mean, I understand, obviously, we needed to balance books first in June before the official, financial year ended. I'm aware of that. But I still like, if we just got this done before Rice to Arsenal got done, we probably would have had that £80 million bid accepted. But because they saw a player who they value similarly or think of a roughly similar quality go for £105 million, so I understand. Yeah, well, if I was Brighton, I understand why I would ask more money as well if I was them.
Yeah, just the interesting thing on that is you're right, but I actually said this at the time, and I got so much grief from Arsenal fans because they were like, "No, we will go for Caicedo. We will go for Caicedo," and I was like, Chelsea, well, because I was told basically, I was told that Chelsea did not believe Arsenal would come back in. So I think the reason why they waited, even though what you said is fair, is because Brighton were telling them we have competition here, so we're going to raise the price really highly. But Chelsea were adamant. Is what I was
told.
There's
not going to be competition. There's not
going to be competition. Arsenal are going to go for Rice. They're going to leave it at that. So that they probably did get right, to be fair. But equally, it now means they have a barometer to sell for, which is a ridiculous amount. And it also means the way Arsenal negotiated for Rice, to be honest, was terrible because they were at like 90 plus something and then immediately jumped to 105. The second Man City came in, which
but they had their player for pre-season. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, fine. And who cares really if you spend an extra 10 million? That's the other thing. It's not like Chelsea don't have this money. People were like, "Oh, that Livramento selling clause, let's add that on to Caicedo." It's like, well, it's not like we don't have this 10 million. We just spent 10 million on a Brazilian guy. Like, it's just about paying what they're worth. Because Cucurella last summer was such an overpay that Brighton almost like felt like they could toy with us because they were like, you jumped immediately, this guy. You paid so much over, and you almost gave us one of the best young talents in world football with the deal. Like, we know you'll overpay. We don't, because we now negotiated. But that's how they think of us. They're like, we saw you do that last summer. We saw you bid for Romeo Lavia for 50 million in the same summer he joined. So don't start coming at us as if you always knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Like I say, and I understand that from their perspective as well. It's like, but that's where I question Win Stanley, because I'm like, but like if it was still Boehly in charge, I totally understand Brighton's stance on a lot of these things. But surely Winston, like, he knows all of these lot. Like, just tell them what the situation is. Why do they not believe you? Like, come on, you're supposed to be their mate, man. Look, I don't know. It baffles me. But hey, at the end of the day, if we get it done, I'm glad. If we're not, I'm fuming. Essentially, that's what it's going to be. Can you at all see a situation where this still drags out even anywhere near close to deadline day? Or do you think if it gets done, it will get done within the next week or two?
Yeah, that would be my guess, because I think Chelsea, if their next bid got rejected, and especially immediately rejected, I do think they just step by step, just leave it behind. Because also, like, 5 bids is embarrassing. I don't think it makes you look good in the market. It makes you seem so desperate. If you can go up after your 5th bid, you're essentially saying, I'm just going to keep going up until you accept it. So I do think that you'd expect the next bid comes in the next week, just logically, unless Vlahovic and Lukaku like suddenly heats up and they're preoccupied with that. So yeah, I think they'd leave that. Also, they do have their list of alternatives, and people like Tyler Adams, for example, with his release clause. The championship season has already started. You won't really want to suddenly pull him out after he's played 3 games on deadline day. You'll want to get him as soon as possible. So I think logically, and also what I think Chelsea will do is they'll submit their next bid after Caicedo is pushed a bit, which I reckon he's already doing a bit now. And if that gets rejected, they will genuinely move on, which is a huge shame because I think he's absolutely perfect. But I think that's the reality.
Fair play. But you did just say Tyler Adams as an alternative, because when that report came out, I'm like, surely. Like, I wouldn't mind him as a backup option at all. 20 million because of obviously them getting relegated seems pretty good. But as an actual alternative to Caicedo, that's even worse than Sanchez. Like, what? Like, surely that cannot be the situation, no? Like, I understand maybe it's a bit of a brief and they're like, oh, we have alternatives, but this alternative, no one's going to take seriously, are they?
Well, Tyler Adams, I was directly told, was actually an alternative. So I do know he is actually a target. Chelsea have looked at him. What I'd say is, to be honest, I agree with you because I don't want anyone to replace Caicedo. But equally, I also would hate if we got Caicedo and also got Tyler Adams, purely because I just don't understand why the hell you would get Tyler Adams at that point, because we have Andrey Santos and Lesley Ugochukwu. So, I mean, I guess it doesn't make sense from either end. Yeah, my thing with Tyler Adams is I do actually rate him. I literally put out a whole tweet on this. I think he's a very good player and it's a cheap price. But firstly, and some people hate me for saying this, you got rid of Ampadu and he's really not that much worse of a player. Like, he genuinely isn't that much worse. He is worse, but not that much worse, right? Yeah. And second, and the other thing is, what I don't like is giving up a quality. So a lot of people are like, leave Caicedo, get João Palhinha. And I'm like, João Palhinha is very, very good at what he does, which is just being a defensive presence and sitting back. And they're like, but that's what Chelsea needs because there's Enzo next to him. But why would you give up a quality? For example, Caicedo or Rice, for example, they give you all that defensive work. They also give you that on the ball. You shouldn't divvy up qualities between each position. If you can get it all in one go, you might as well have it. So I feel like with Tyler Adams, that's what you'd be doing. He's very good at being that defensive guy. He's not terrible on the ball, but he's not Caicedo. And I think it would be the exact same thing, as you said, as Robert Sanchez, which is kind of just like accepting mediocrity. Not mediocrity, just not top level. And I feel like we really should just aim for the top. And if we can't get the top, wait to get the top. Like, wait next summer.
That's what I mean.
Like, help.
If we said, okay, because even if we sign Caicedo, right, we're going to play a double pivot most of the season, right? So you have Enzo and Caicedo. And then, I mean, Gallagher's still up in the air. Will he stay? Will he not? He's not really meant to play in a pivot anyway, even though he did all right at it in preseason, I must say. Better than I expected anyway. Then you've got Santos there, but I mean, Poch didn't give him any minutes in the last preseason game before the season, so he clearly puts Gallagher in that position above Santos. So that, you still rate Santos, but that tells me he doesn't want Santos to be the only replacement in that position either. So that's what I thought when the Tyler Adams thing came out. I'm like, okay, Poch wants a bit more experience. Tyler Adams isn't old, but compared to the other players we've signed, he's a bit older because he's 24 at least, USA captain. So I saw some sort of logic with that. But if he's only as a replacement to Caicedo, well, then I bloody hope it never happens because, that just means Caicedo doesn't. And, to me, it's honestly, it's a complete calamity if we don't get Caicedo at this point, because I wouldn't even say we have a midfield if we go into the season without Caicedo. I know how you said Disasi was a priority and Sanchez was a priority. To me, I know Fofana was injured, but you still have Thiago Silva and you still have Chalobah. To me, you cannot say that Disasi was that urgent of a priority. Caicedo has been urgent since June because we sold all the other midfielders. If Ruben was still here and we were kind of waiting to sell Ruben until we sign the replacement. Totally fair enough. But we don't. We sold all of them already. We have no one left. So, yeah, to me, it's a bit baffling. But hey, here we are. It is what it is. To get to a few different kinds of reports, I guess we spoke about Tyler Adams as a potential alternative. Nizar Kantela has come out saying that Leandro Paredes from PSG is a replacement or an alternative option, sorry. Have you heard anything regarding that at all? I just remember we were linked to him back in 2019 on the Sarri. It never happened. He went to PSG then. Decent player, but I wouldn't even say is he even the ilk of player of Caicedo? I don't even know, man.
Yeah, I sent this on actually, but I never got a reply, so I can't say. But I would say it kind of makes sense because Pochettino has spoken about experience so much in his press conferences about wanting to get experience in midfield, which I've been slightly confused by at the same time because I'm just like, who actually is experienced, but he also like he's a very, very good player. Paredes, well, yeah, he's not even. I don't know. I think of Caicedo's experience, but then he's just not at all. Paredes is weird because I feel like he's a decent player, but equally, when I think about it, I'm like, when have you ever watched him? I'm not really sure. So I have no idea if it's true. If Pochettino really wants his experience and he sees in Paredes, and obviously he coached him at PSG, then sure, get him in. But definitely, please don't be a direct alternative to anyone coming in. But I'm sure it's not. I would be shocked. Adams, you could complain, could have been like, oh, they're giving up Caicedo for Paredes, but I really don't think Paredes would be an alternative to Caicedo. Also, he's not a defensive midfielder from what I remember. He's more of like a Enzo guy, but maybe more of a dribbler. I don't know. So
yeah. I don't really know. I found him a bit of a weird guy ever since he decided to go to PSG back then because, well, he never became a starter since then, and it was the most obvious thing ever. So why did you, as a career choice, just never seemed very smart to me. So ever since I'm like, I don't really rate you because you make stupid career choices. But maybe that was a bit harsh. I never really looked into it all too much. I will be honest. I guess maybe it suits a bit later, but I want to talk about this one here because I quite like this player. Only problem is injured until October. But apparently, according to Fabrice Hawkins, who is very good in terms of French news, as far as I'm aware, but, Olise is kind of only really pretend French. Like, I know he plays for the France under 21s, but like he's born in London. He speaks like the most London person you'll ever meet. He speaks more like, more English than bloody Harry Kane does. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But apparently we've made some sort of £25 million verbal proposal to sign Michael Olise. Now, first of all, have you heard anything if that's true at all? And regardless of that, do you think it would be a good move? Again, obviously, the only issue being the hamstring injury.
So, yeah, I'm putting myself a bit in the fire here, but I did ask about this specifically today, and I was told there's been no verbal bid for Olise. I mean, maybe this is some verbal is like it can mean anything, right? You can float it around. For example, Newcastle gave us a verbal indication of what they send on Cucurella. That's not a verbal offer, right? That's not an official offer. It's anything. And obviously, we haven't been in talks with Palace over Lewis Hall, for example. So I'm not going to say it's completely wrong. I'm sure he has reason to believe what he said, but I don't think I've been told there's no verbal offer in for Olise. But what I have been told is that Chelsea love him. I was told out of all of the attacking mid/right wing options, so that's Kudus, Cherki, Vega, Olise, and at one time Mateus Franco, but that kind of went downhill.
He was now, so
yeah, exactly. That he was the most scouted and the most liked unanimously among the Chelsea board. However, at the same time, I was told, and this has slightly changed over the last week, that Kudus was the one that had a bit more heat behind it, that Chelsea were more thinking of going for. And I never went too strong with that because that could have been just because of Olise's hamstring injury, which still must be a slight concern because there doesn't seem to be a clear indication of when he's back. And I've heard October, but it seems to be that it's not completely clear. But out of those four, it seems Olise and Kudus are the most concrete. And also, I'd say that I would be surprised at all if we got both of them and instead of going for a striker, because I've been told that Chelsea are very impressed with Nicolas Jackson, but also really liked Nkunku up top, and he's still seen as a 10.
That's interesting because I didn't get to watch all of the game when he was up top, but I personally was the fan at all. Partly of what you were mentioning earlier with Kepa, I'm like, can we stop punting balls to Nkunku for the love of God?
Yeah, well, I mean, they still see him as a number 10, and they've always seen him as a number 10, but they still see it as a more of a viable option. What I always compare it to is, I think if you put Havertz up top, like he's literally a donkey up top, and Nkunku, you don't get to see all his qualities because he's good on the ball and picks up pockets, but he's a very competent finisher, and you could see that with the goals he was finishing. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting. As I said, no verbal proposal on personal hand. I bloody love Olise. All of last summer, I was begging for us to sign him because I thought City would come in from next summer, which is exactly what they've done. He's literally Riyad Mahrez like. He's the exact same player. So I'd love if we signed him. I think he's perfect. I want to see him more as that attacking midfielder because I think we could use him there too. But the other thing is, I could see us getting two. If we don't get a striker, but also I feel like we kind of need to sell Conor Gallagher if we got to. I know Gallagher's been playing more in the pivot, but I still feel like we'd need to move him on if we got to. So yeah,
and probably send Chukwuemeka on loan if we got to, I guess.
I don't know. I don't know about that. I mean, I haven't played it out too much, but I see Chukwuemeka as someone who plays in the pivot. I know he's played more as a 10, but Poch has said he can play as a 10 or an 8. But Chukwuemeka for me, like, I don't see a point in sending him on loan. I think he's just too good. Like some people,
I agree, but my logic was if we're gonna sign two in that position he's played in preseason, then how's he gonna get minutes? I guess if he is an option for the pivot, fair play. But then wasn't preseason the time to try that rather than the Premier League campaign? Do you know what I mean?
No, you're right. You're right. No, you are right. I mean, in my head, I do just think of him in the pivot. So I think of it as almost like Santos, Caicedo, Enzo, Chukwuemeka. If we sell on Gallagher, I think unless I've forgotten someone, that's how it would be. And also like. I mean, Nkunku's played left in preseason. We've seen that, so he can move across. Olise's always injured, so he won't always be there. So is Madueke. I just think that Chukwuemeka is one of those players similar to Colwill last season. And even though Colwill obviously improved a lot, he's just so good you can't send him on loan. Like he'll directly impact your season. But yeah, I've waffled quite a lot. But Kudus and Olise are the two ones to look out for. And personally, I love Olise and 35 million, which apparently is release clause, which seems to be very misreported. Like people are saying it's true, people are saying it's not. That's very cheap. If we can get him for the £30 million mark, that would be exceptional.
I find it baffling if there is such a release clause. Obviously, you said, as far as you're aware, there was no verbal proposal, but I would find it baffling if we made a verbal proposal for £25 million when there is a release clause of £35 million. Like, I know, obviously, the release clause you then can't or usually don't amortize. So I guess maybe that's to do with it, but just fucking pay the release clause if it's 35 million. But I guess one thing to say with Olise is at least there's no stress in signing him, right now because he's injured anyway. So it doesn't really make a difference whether you sign him now or whether you sign him in late August or even on deadline day. It doesn't change anything if he's not going to be fit until October or whatever anyway. But obviously, like Felix touched on, we need to get some sort of assurances, guarantees about his injuries. But I mean, we sent, who was it? Fofana out to that doctor in New York hasn't really helped, really, because he's missed pretty much all of last season and now that his ACL. Yeah. But I'm not going to be too hard. I assume it's just get unlucky, plus being a bit more injury prone than other people, obviously. But he's not really had the green of the thumb, has he, poor old Fofana. But yeah, kudos, Olise. I like them both. I'm surprised you're saying it could be both, but I wouldn't hate it, I guess. But at the same time, it's funny how when you go back to like June or May, we were all saying the priorities that we had were midfielder, striker, and goalkeeper. And now we're signing two, maybe, not definitely, but maybe signing two attacking midfielders / wingers. I'm like, who thought that?
Yeah, well, I'm going to prop myself because I did actually say we need to get I said more right winger, but I was looking at our squad and I was like, it's just Madueke on that right hand side and Sterling if need be, and he's so injury prone, we need one. So but I do agree with you. I mean, two is just something being floated about. I'm saying not to say no to it. Like I wouldn't be shocked. But with these Vlahovic talks, I mean, we could easily sign a striker and it could just be one. But we'll see. I mean, get one in the first place. Nothing's happened yet. So let's see.
Exactly. I mean, I don't have a tweet to bring up for this, but what do you make of the whole Vlahovic situation anyway? Because to me, it's just really, I mean, I understand we are desperate to get rid of Lukaku, fair enough, but we already decided against Vlahovic a few weeks ago. So there's clear proof to me that either the boards or some of the board or Poch or both are not big fans. So why on earth would you ever entertain it? Like, I understand you need to get rid of Lukaku, but if that was such a big dramatic issue, then loan him out. Do you know what I mean? Like, you were willing to loan him out last year. Why wouldn't you be willing to loan him out now if it's so dramatic that you need to get rid of him? But how do you see that one? And what do you make of Vlahovic anyway? Like, I've said it a few times, there's political reasons why I don't want Vlahovic as well. But even from a footballing side of things, I'm like, to me, he's just a younger but not as good Lukaku, because there's so many similarities in how they play. I'm like, I know Lukaku didn't not work because of how good he is, but because of other reasons. But still, do I want to try it again? I don't know, man. I don't know. I'd rather just go with Jackson and Broja and see where that leads us, and then look again in January or next summer.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say firstly, I think it's a misconception on Chelsea rejecting Vlahovic in July. I don't think they rejected the player. They've always been interested. So Laurence Stewart's a big fan of the player, and so is Pochettino. He's always been in our list. But the reason why we rejected him is just because of the conditions of the deal. At the time, it just didn't work for us to get him. Because as I said, we needed to shift on players. At the time, Aubameyang hadn't left either. Our focus was shifted elsewhere, and probably stuff that I don't even understand. So they rejected the conditions of the deal that Juventus gave us, rather than us rejecting the player. So I wouldn't say we suddenly like the player when we didn't like him a month ago. I don't think that's the case. But on Vlahovic, for me, I really feel like I should have watched him more, because he's quite a big player. But honestly, I haven't watched him that much. I listen to people who I know know what they're talking about, and some of them say that he is actually quite a good, all well-rounded striker. But for some reason, I don't think of him as that. I think of him as just a pure finisher. So to be honest, it doesn't excite me. Although I can't say that lack of excitement is based off too much actual evidence. Maybe it's just listening to other people. I would be the same as you. I really don't like the striker market right now. I think Vlahovic is literally one of your few options, and Kolo Muani is too expensive and also seems like he's going to PSG. After that, it's literally no one. I'd rather we stick with Jackson, Nkunku, Broja, whatever, and play them around, especially Jackson. He looks incredible. Look at Ivan Toney in January, which is an idea being floated about. Don't need to, just see what the conditions of the deal are like.
Is it also an idea floated about within the club, or is it more of a fan base thing?
No. I was directly told, and I have this 100% confirmed. So Winstanley has an idea, and to be fair, I haven't checked this up, but I mean, it's an idea to go for Ivan Toney in January rather than any striker now. And I had this confirmed on the Chelsea side, but I also had a contact directly with Ivan Toney's agent, who told me that he, a bit of openness here, I probably shouldn't say that, but that told me that Winstanley has been in contact with the camp since May directly. So he's keeping that option open. The problem with Chelsea is they don't have a hierarchy. They have two people upstairs. So they need to all agree on one transfer target for you to go for it. So it is literally just Winstanley's idea, as far as I know. And it's not like something that they've all agreed upon going for. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
And then Laurence Stewart needs to agree with it.
Yeah, exactly. And probably like other people in the room too, like Joe Shields, Carl McCauley, but he's the big one. And he's a fan of Vlahovic, as I said. So it's slightly conflicting. It's not like they all completely disagree, but they have to come to some consensus. So that's
still
one
like
thing.
An arm wrestle or whatever. Whoever wins,
It is though. Like that's when I asked why Christopher Weevil left, and I'd heard rumblings of this for a while. It was to do with similar stuff like that there's not really a hierarchy, and Chelsea are looking to fix it. But there's not really a hierarchy. Some people being undermined, and he values being undermined. So I don't think it's the best strategy long term, but luckily Chelsea know that. And the other thing I'd say, it's not just Toney, but next summer, I would see how the transfer market opens up. There'll always be new people on the market. I wonder if Julian Alvarez could maybe get tired of being on the bench for Man City. I wonder if Evan Ferguson is suddenly available, although he will literally be 300 million. Yeah, but I actually love him. Like I think he's
I do
brilliant.
too.
But I mean, that's just what I mean. That there'll be people available next summer. So yeah, I would rather it play out. But again, as I said, haven't watched Vlahovic that much, so don't take my opinion too seriously.
Fair enough. You just touched on it there that Chelsea want to or are trying to change that hierarchy problem. Can you, or do you know anything in what way they're trying to change it? Like, are they just trying to change the hierarchy in and of itself that already exists? Or are they trying to add someone in that's actually going to be above even Laurence Stewart and Paul Winstanley?
Yeah, so basically what they're trying to do, since Boehly stepped back, they've had two people upstairs, co-sporting directors, and they've realized it hasn't worked because it takes ages to reach a decision because two people have to reach one decision, and there's just not one head. You need one head to decide it. And Boehly, when he was that head, it was useful to have a head, but he didn't really know what he was talking about. So Chelsea's plan is to either get someone new, and the only name I know has been floated about is Paul Mitchell. That's the one name I know, like they're at least considering. or just to promote someone from within to actually just become the head, whether that's Lawrence Stewart or Paul Winstanley, just so that one of those is now the boss and the other people work under him. So that's the plan. I was told, I mean, it's clear now, but I was told like a month ago that it won't actually happen for this summer, that they won't bring in anyone this summer, because you can't bring in someone midsummer. Yeah. It just wouldn't work. I saw someone just write in the chat, isn't Edwards available, who's the Liverpool guy? So he's someone, I have no idea. I'm not going to pretend that I've heard his name, but I remember last summer when we were signing directors left, right, and centre, he was a name that was floated about and seems.
And then it was said he wanted to take a year out, but now that year is done, I think that's what Supreme is trying to.
Yeah, you'd assume. You'd assume. But again, I'm not going to pretend that I've heard about someone I haven't. So exactly. It'd be cool if we brought him in.
But hey,
so that's the situation.
Todd, if you're watching, give Edwards a call. You know what I mean, that's what I would say. I mean, not that I have any issues with Paul Mitchell, but wasn't Paul Mitchell at Spurs as well in the past? I'm like, at some point, we're going to bloody change the lion to a chicken on a Chelsea badge. You know what I mean? Like, calm down with the ex-Spurs, please.
I know who's been at Monaco. Has he been at Spurs? I don't actually know.
I thought someone said he worked with Poch before, so I assumed that must have been at Spurs. But
okay.
I didn't look into it.
I have no idea. Okay.
There you go. But to bring up a tweet of your end, two actually interesting things. I guess we'll start. Who shall we start with? I don't really know which one I would prefer to start with, so I'm going to go with that one first. Exclusive from your end, and then it's kind of essentially been reported by someone else from Nizar, that Ian Maatsen has been, well, you said verbally offered a new contract by Chelsea, but I would almost argue the bigger main thing is it's going to stay this season, plus being offered a new contract. First of all, brilliant news in my books, because, I mean, we got rid of him, if you ask me, a couple or too many academy players anyway. So keeping one or two more in the squad is fantastic. The only question mark I have over this is he's a left back, and in not a single minute of preseason he spent at left back. So what is the situation here with him staying? I understand obviously what you followed up with in the follow-up tweet below, that it's kind of been to do with Cucurella as well. But if you want to keep Maatsen also at left back, surely you should also play him at left back every now and again, no? So what do you make of this? Or do you think Poch will make him the new Gareth Bale and turn him from a left back to an attacker?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's in the subtweet, but to be fair, they're not linked. I just thought I'd put Cucurella there, and I knew if I put Cucurella as one whole tweet, that people would be going crazy, and I thought it gets slightly less traction as a thread, so I thought that would be easier. The situation with Maatsen is what I wrote there, pretty much, that Poch has been really impressed with him. Chelsea have been, I was told like a week ago that we're going to offer him, that we've told them we're going to offer him a contract, and then yesterday or this morning, I don't remember, I was told that it's been offered directly through his agents, which I got confirmed from both sides. So it has been put in. Nothing's been accepted yet. Maatsen is very open to staying. He said he's wanted to stay, but equally he does need to figure out whether he'll be getting minutes, whether it's beneficial for him, which is obvious. And to be fair, he is getting minutes, so it should all be good. But yeah, I mean, I have said he's set to stay in the first team squad, but it's important to say if a contract is agreed, because his have I misspelled agreed there? I have. It has to be if a contract is agreed, because his contract runs out next summer. So he won't obviously stay in the first team squad if it's not. I saw someone else who I know is very reliable. I think it was Path, CFC Paris. I never actually checked this, say that Maatsen has a 1-year option on his contract, which isn't really useful. But if a contract can't be agreed, there is a chance he stays with that option. But even then, I feel like Chelsea would rather put that option to increase his value and then sell him. So yeah, a contract has come in. It's also interesting because he was fully for sale at the beginning of the window for around 25 million. There was indications that Chelsea would accept less as the window went on because his contract was running out. But the biggest offer they ever got was 15 million plus some add-ons from Burnley, and they never came back. There was a lot of interested clubs, and Nizar today reported West Ham were interested, which makes sense because they need a left back and he'd be perfect, but they never actually went even to 20 million. So but anyway, situation has changed, contract has been offered, and they're going to talk over the next week, and hopefully.
And do you have any indication of whether he's likely to accept that, or is he kind of on the fence, or what's the situation, or does he want assurances? Like, is he more likely to accept if we tell him, yeah, we're trying to sell Cucurella, eventually he will be gone, and then you can be the left back, whatever? Like, how do you see that one?
Well, I spoke to the player side this morning after I put out the report, actually, and they said, well, obviously. So it's true, but they said, or they're basically saying we're going to talk over the next week, but it has to be right for Ian, which is like I mean, it's obvious, but it has to be right for Maatsen. He has to actually be playing. He has to continue progressing. He's played almost every game for the past 3 seasons because he rarely gets injured. So he just has to make sure it's the right developmental pathway. And the other thing that will be interesting, and I have no idea, I'm trying to find out an answer for, and I'd expect it's what we've seen in pre-season, is where's he actually going to play next season? Now, obviously, if we have a crisis at left back, it's not like Poch is going to refuse him playing a left back, but indications would say that he's going to slightly more play as an attacking midfielder, right winger, left winger, wherever Poch puts him, rather than a left back.
Does he mind that?
So that's the thing. I don't know. I've asked this, but that's probably one thing that they were saying when they were like, it has to be right for Ian, because maybe, let's say he wants to be a left back long term. I mean, he has been a left back.
Who wants to be a full back long term? Let's be honest now.
Well, I mean, in the professional game, he's been a left back for the past 3 years. Yeah. He's played loads of other positions throughout his developing. So yeah, that's probably one thing that will need to be discussed. But yeah, I don't know if he has some preference to play some position. I'm trying to find that out, and if I do find out, then I'll post it somewhere. But yeah, it'll be interesting.
No, fair dues. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting because obviously for the time being, while I guess Chilwell and Cucurella are there, as much as Maatsen and Lewis Hall, we'll get to him in a minute as well, are better than Cucurella, realistically, even though I haven't watched much of Maatsen at Burnley. So I've seen a load of different talks. Some people have said he's super good attacking. Some people have said he kind of played inverted anyway. So I'm like, that kind of contradicts itself in my books. So I don't really know.
Kind of true, to be fair. That's kind of true. He inverted into centre back, he'd invert into midfield, but he'd also get up the pitch quite a lot. Obviously, like having covered the loan account, probably watched him more than any Chelsea fan. But yeah, he was brilliant at Burnley, and he played in a team that constantly had the ball, constantly making passes, constantly winning, and also tactical, just improving his tactical nous, really, because Company is a very interesting manager. But yeah, it is kind of true, even though it sounds crazy. They had the ball so much that he'd invert in possession, but then suddenly he'd just bomb up the pitch and get him behind. So
yeah, there you go. I mean, do you see him more as a left back, or wouldn't you mind a transition from him to a more attacking player?
I mean, I can't lie. It gets smaller and smaller each game because I'm like, oh no, he is actually good there, but like, I don't see why we haven't played him at left back even once in preseason, like even for 5 minutes. I still see him as a left back. Like, I think, and he is surprising me every single game, and he is having a direct effect. But equally, I wouldn't say he has anything too special in these attacking positions. And to be fair to him, like,
and he seems so very left-footed. I'm not sure if that's just me.
Oh, yeah.
But he seems to not want to use his right foot at all.
Which is not a problem at all at left back.
Yeah.
But
as a 10, for example, it sure is.
Yeah. To be fair to him, like, he has shocked me almost. Like, I knew he was technical, but he's exceptional in tight spaces. Yeah. But when you're talking about Chelsea and the level we want to be, sometimes you can make football a bit simple and you can be great in tight spaces. But if you don't have one of those FIFA stats at 90, then you probably, do you get what I mean? Like, you should... Yeah. You'd hope you do. So at left back, I feel like you see more of his qualities. And actually, he's played left wing a couple of times. I remember him linking up with Lewis Hall at, like, when he came on for 30 minutes against Fulham or something. And he wasn't playing left back, but he was very often in that position. And I was like,
almost like a left wing back with, even though you play
exactly. And I'm like, I've seen you take up those positions before, so that seems natural. So I mean, I would give him a couple of more minutes at left back. I'd like to see him back there, but it's great to know that you put him at that attacking midfield position and he has absolutely no problem playing there. But I would still see his future as a left back, kind of. I think maybe Poch is playing with the fact that he realizes he can't shift Cucurella on, so he's like, I'm going to have 2 left backs here. I might have to at least try you in another position. But yeah, I don't understand why he hasn't played at least 5 minutes at left back.
No, me neither. And especially the decision to now seemingly want to keep him. Now, obviously, maybe that will somewhat depend on how many attacking midfielders / wingers come in terms of what we just spoke about, Olise and Kudus and stuff. I guess maybe that has an impact. But yeah, I find it a bit, I'm very happy if he stays, but I find it a bit odd, the whole where he's been used so far, and on the basis of where he's been used so far, that we've decided to keep him. Almost making me think maybe there is a possibility to shift Cucurella. Otherwise, why would this decision have been made? But I don't know anything about that, and it seems rather unlikely, especially with Cucurella, constantly saying that he wants to stay and prove himself. So it's not like he's looking to move.
I'm sure he wants to stay on his wages. I'm not surprised about that. Yeah, Cucurella, I mean, it's pretty simple, but basically, he hasn't impressed Pochettino. Chelsea want to sell him. Although the interesting thing, I didn't say this on Twitter because I knew people would misunderstand it, but like, we're technically not actively trying to sell him. There's a difference between actively selling someone and having them available for sale.
Yeah.
So if you're actively trying to sell someone, you're going to clubs being like, we're offering you this guy. But we can't really do that because he's on such high wages, it'll piss off the player and suddenly we'll be in a terrible situation. But it's very well known he's available for sale because he has been the whole summer. And there's been tentative interest from Atletico, Newcastle, Juventus earlier on in the window, but nothing's come about recently. So anyone telling you we're going to sell him is probably guessing at this point because nothing's officially in.
Exactly. So if anyone, who's the left back of Newcastle? Target, isn't it?
Dan Burn and Target.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to go up to Newcastle, snap Target's ankle so they get Cucurella, I want some, but don't blame me. Not sure if you're meant with misunderstand or whatever is exactly meant with misunderstand.
But, some people throw a little joke at the use of the word understand because I used it for quite a long time. So yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
Hey, understand is an important word. If only people would understand a bit more. Sometimes that would make life much easier. But we appreciate the donation, CFC Blue. Yeah. We appreciate it very, very much. But yeah, another topic on one of these left backs, which we have so many of, and we still sign Cucurella for some reason. An exclusive from your end again. You said Lewis Hall will join Crystal Palace on loan for the season, but it is now increasingly likely he will not sign a long-term extension before leaving. Obviously, Fabrizio Romano yesterday, 2 days ago, reporting that this loan is kind of nearing, but he will extend fast type thing. You said Hall has 3 years left after a 1-year option was triggered this summer, but he does not want to sign a new contract yet. Chelsea initially planned on keeping Hall as a squad player this season, but the player wanted to play week in, week out. Chelsea had no intention to sell with top clubs interested, so a loan was agreed. Chelsea will hope to convince the player and agree a long-term contract. So where do you stand on this? Because to me, it seems quite simple. If he wants to play week in, week out, then tell him, well, you're only going on loan if you agree a contract. And surely that should solve the problem, no? Like if he's so adamant to want to play week in, week out, then he will have to agree to that, no?
Well, this is such a complicated
Probably
situation.
Made it a bit simpler than it is now. But
this is such a complicated situation. I've been like behind the scenes on it for the past 2 months because there's been so much different stuff going on. Well, firstly, what you just said is exactly what Chelsea did up until, I don't know when, but literally like a day or two ago. Like I was speaking to a good source and they were saying, he's going to go on loan now, but they're saying he literally cannot go unless he signs an extension. And then this morning I spoke to a Chelsea source and they said, actually, they're just going to trigger the 1-year option. So he'll go on that. So then I checked it on that side. They were like, yeah, he's managed to, the situation has changed. So they're letting him go without it. I might go on a huge monologue here, but basically the situation with Lewis Hall is quite hard. He's joining Crystal Palace on loan. He actually wasn't meant to go on loan, and it seemed quite unlikely to go on loan. One reason was, as I said there, Chelsea wanted to keep him as a squad player this season, someone who can fill midfield and left back. And also, he really wasn't interested in a loan move. He didn't want to go on loan. So I was surprised he went on loan. But as I said there, Chelsea rejected official offers from top clubs, including Newcastle, Manchester City. They had no interest in selling him. So the kind of meet in the middle was a loan, which obviously to Crystal Palace is completely fine. It's a brilliant club to go on loan to. But he doesn't want to sign a long-term extension. And it depends how you look at it. I think it's a bit of a shame.
Do you know the reasons why he doesn't want to sign a long-term extension? Does he just want to have more assurances that he'll actually play in the future before signing that?
Yeah, I mean, it depends how you look at it. Although, I mean, really, he's just being logical, right? He just doesn't want to sign away his future. That's pretty much the situation. And especially seeing the amount of clubs that came for him this summer, which was over half of the Premier League, he does not want to tie down 5 years, whatever, on top of his 3 years and suddenly be locked in a jail at Chelsea, right? It's nothing that he hates Chelsea. It's more just being logical. So depends how you say it. But equally, I have kind of made it seem a better situation in this tweet than it actually is because I didn't want people to go crazy. Initially, that last paragraph was slightly different. So really, right now at Chelsea, internally, this loan move is seen as a loan to sell loan move. Now, I didn't say that because that sounds crazy, but that's more based off the logic that Lewis Hall does not want to sign a new long-term contract and he'll have 2 years when he comes back next season. And if he doesn't want to sign a long-term contract, he'll have to be sold that summer. And the way that Chelsea always win, which is how clubs operate, right? Obviously, the player still wins because he'll get a move. But the way Chelsea always win is that this loan move will up his value. this summer, will up his value for next summer. Chelsea don't want to sell Lewis Hall at all because they really rate him, but equally they don't think his value is as high as it's going to be next summer. So it's not like, I don't want to sign a long-term contract this summer, so we're going to sell you. It was, we rate you, and also your value is going to be 2 times next summer, so let's just take you on loan. Now, equally, the other reason I didn't say that is because it does make it seem like a more panicked situation than it is. It's a similar situation to Levi Colwill. If during the season Lewis Hall performs really well and we show him a clear pathway into the first team, we're like, we really rate you. You were one of our best players the season before. You've been exceptional on loan, and here's your position in the squad. There's no reason Lewis Hall would not sign an extension. It's not like he hates Chelsea. It's more just him being logical, but a byproduct of that is that right now, where he's shown no indication to want to sign a long-term contract, it is likely going to be a loan to sell for next summer. But again, it depends on a lot of things. But right now, there's no intention to sign a new contract with a lot of interest from top clubs offering him to play week in, week out, including this season, which is why he wasn't really interested in the loan move, because he was like, I can go to this club, which is even better, and they're offering me to play every single week, and you're offering me to play as a squad player, which again sounds entitled, but really it's just like you've got 2 job offers. One is offering you so much more than the other, not in terms of wages, just in terms of playing. Why wouldn't you pick the other one? Yeah. I wouldn't panic too much, but it is the reality of the situation.
There you go. Very interesting. I mean, it's a tough one, I guess, because especially if you have Maatsen as well, and that's one more interesting question. I mean, with how you worded it now, I'm not sure quite how much influence we will or should have, but do you have any idea at all whether Palace plan to play him at left back or in midfield?
No. Okay. So I asked this, and apparently it's not been decided yet. It hasn't been decided. It will be a bit of a mix of the two. I really hope that he just picks a position. Now, Lewis Hall really wants to play in midfield. I know that for a fact, because he's literally played in midfield up until the last 2 years. He hadn't even touched left back, is what I was told from someone who had coached him down those years. So he really wants to play in midfield. However, equally, I think if you offered him a pathway into Chelsea first team playing as a left back, and Poch's left backs do attack a lot, I don't think he'd say no. I just think that he and Chelsea should really pick a position before this loan move and say, we want to develop you in this one position and stick to it. But at Palace especially, I think his versatility will be used, because not only are they missing someone next to Doucouré in midfield, I'd say, so they have Eze or Franca, Doucouré as the DM, and then it makes sense to put Lewis Hall there instead of Jeffrey Schlupp. But also they have Tyrick Mitchell, who was terrible last season. So I really wouldn't be surprised to see him moving between the two, depending on who's playing worse, really.
Very interesting. I mean, it's a tough one, because like you touched on, it's kind of like with Levi Colwill, I suppose, but it kind of, in Lewis's Hall cases, needs almost a decision on his position, because how can we decide on whether we want to give him a pathway in the first team without knowing where he's best at? That's the problem, because you're like, okay, are we thinking about left back though? Okay, do we need to move on Cucurella? Are you happy with being Chilwell's backup? But then there's also Maatsen. But then in midfield, I mean, it's much easier to get into the squad, because I mean, we only really have Enzo that's nailed on. Hopefully Caicedo soon, and everything else is kind of still up in the air. Obviously, Santos is super talented, and Ugochukwu is talented as well, but he's probably going to go on loan. Let's see how that one goes. But so I guess there's an option, but to start, Lewis Hall fighting his way in the starting 11 over Enzo and Caicedo, that's going to be tough. So yeah, I guess, I hope it just...
But also, it's slightly on Chelsea's end also, because they offered him this season to be a squad player between the two roles. So they haven't even defined it themselves. So I think I would love for the two to just have a meeting and decide which position to stay in. I'm the biggest Lewis Hall midfield propaganda, because I've seen him play both positions so many times. And people
has he played in a double pivot as well as such, like as a 6, or is it more been as an 8?
No, always in a double pivot. But okay. I mean, you don't want him as the Caicedo. Obviously, you want him as the slightly more advanced one.
Yeah.
But he still played in a double pivot, and really, like, Chelsea fans are saying, "Oh, people just made this up." No, you haven't seen the best of Lewis Hall in midfield. People say you lose his crossing, like you really don't. He creates these angles to cross. However, equally, I do think he's a brilliant left back, and I think it allows him to almost be more risky with his dribbles, because he can go down the byline. And I almost would say that he should stick to left back, and I think he could. And I really think that if he is going to stick to left back, I really hope he decides soon, because even though I'm the biggest Lewis Hall fan, I also think he has a lot of development to do at left back, specifically defensively, which is fine because he hasn't played that much. So he doesn't really have the instinct, but he kind of needs to decide whether he's playing there or not, so he can actually work on it. Because there was a couple of instances where, you could see he wasn't used to someone running in behind him and being on the last line of defense or on a corner being that tight to his man. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I like him a lot. I hope he ends up staying. I hope he ends up playing for us. But at the end of the day, let's for me, if he goes on loan to Palace now, even before signing a contract, let's see how he does there. Let's see how he does in which position there. And then we'll just go from there, because we've managed it with Colwell. I'm sure we can manage it with Hall. If we really want to keep him, I'm sure we'll find a way. At least with the way Lampard spoke about him, having been here, he seems character-wise a bit more one of those that is like, yeah, I'm going to stay at the club, obviously, but maybe I'm just giving him too much of a benefit of the doubt here. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not sure if you know anything about this at all, but Martin Fegan in the chat, he has asked 3 times, do we have anything on sponsors? Because I haven't heard anything. I've been baffled by this for God knows how long. I mean, I have no problem if we go into the season without a sponsor, but just flip and announce it at some point, man. Or sue the Premier League until they allow us Paramount Plus.
Yeah. No, well, that's ridiculous. I can't believe they didn't allow that. I'm going to be full transparency on this. I have a new source that I'm trying to figure out his reliability. That's usually how you do with sources. I haven't used him once, and he's been very hit and miss. But with the sources, with the sponsor thing, for example, do you remember when that video came out? That everyone was like, Nintendo. Everyone was like, is Nintendo our new sponsor, whatever? He told me immediately that they aren't. And it was some campaign for the shirt or something, and it was correct. So you can take this with a pinch of salt. I'm not reporting this. You're allowed to believe it. I asked him yesterday, is there any update? And he said, right now, it's probably most likely we'll be sponsorless, or we'll put some Chelsea charity onto the front to support like some foundation. But equally, there are talks going on. They're not dead in the water. So if something suddenly emerges, then it could happen. But as I've said, please take that with a pinch of salt. It could be some guy BSing me and he's just making stuff up. So I don't really know.
Yeah,
I love it without a sponsor, by the way. I think it looks really cool, but you do
same. I'd much rather without a sponsor than steak. But at the same time, I also understand, the club want to make money. The club are trying to make money here and there and everywhere. And then if you all of a sudden don't have a front of the shirt sponsor, I will also say that doesn't look great on the ownership. I understand how this came about. Obviously, they seemingly had this Paramount Plus thing done. I'm not sure if you know this confirmed from other sources, but to me, that also seemed like a slightly, let's say, favorable time of when that info came out, just after the stake stuff came out and the fans and the media lost their minds about it. And then they're like, oh, surprise, we had Paramount Plus, but the Prem said no. So that seemed a bit convenient, but it might be true regardless. But still, obviously, they wasn't it Iqbali that said, the old ownership wasn't exactly brilliant in terms of marketing off the pitch and whatever else, and now you can't even figure out a sponsor. So that doesn't exactly look great. Yeah, but it probably looks better to have no sponsor or to put charity on it than to turn up with some, Watford level sponsor like State. So I guess, it just depends on what they get. I also understand why they wouldn't just, because there was obviously the rumor that Allianz, the insurance company, the German one, that they weren't willing to offer them any more than 20 million. And I guess you weren't going to give them a long-term contract on that.
No, you can't undervalue yourself. I mean, I think it's better to get no money than to accept money and set a new benchmark for the next 10 years rather than 40.
Exactly.
So,
the only situation in which it becomes a problem is if we don't make Champions League next season, because then we'll be in a situation where, then we're going to be in the same sponsor situation as last year, but we just wasted a year without sponsor money because we could have just had it for a year extra. So, I find it ridiculous, by the way, that we won't know until like February whether top 5 gets you Champions League or only top 4, and that to me is ridiculous. How can you not?
I forgot.
I don't know, because of the new Champions League rules from next season. There's going to be more clubs. Like there's more clubs in total, and then they're going to reassign those extra spots.
Okay.
There was some talk about historical performance, but then there was some talk that the biggest teams and leagues are just going to get 5 spots, which makes sense to me. Why wouldn't you want more Premier League teams in the Champions League, really, with how many good ones there are? But apparently that final decision is only going to be in February. So it's ridiculous to me. But it is what it is. Czech is still better than Kepa now. Yeah, I will also tune into the game for Ukraine when we're done with this. But otherwise, I'll just ask you as simply as that. Is there anything else in terms of transfer news that, might not have hit the mainstream or that we might not have discussed today? We're like, that could still happen. Obviously, we've got a goalie now. We're not going to sign another centre-back after Disasi as well, who I'm still not 1,000% sure we really needed if you just kept Chalobah, but fair enough. It is what it is now. Midfield, is it going to be, if it's Caicedo, is it going to be just Caicedo after Ugochukwu? Or is there a chance another midfielder comes in because Ugochukwu is supposedly going on loan. And I personally still think our midfield is light, even with Caicedo, because you have Enzo, Caicedo, Santos, and then what? Because apparently we want to sell Gallagher. Apparently Casada is going on loan. Apparently Ugochukwu is going on loan. So who's going to be the second backup in midfield?
Yeah, I mean, I'll see what comes to me on that Caicedo thing. I'd say, well, first, it depends if you count that attacking midfielder / right winger as another midfielder. I don't think you are.
No, I meant more for the double
be another midfielder. Yeah, I feel like if you were to get another option, it would be that experienced option that that Pochettino's alluded to. So maybe someone like Paredes is an option. So that will be interesting. But I don't actually know. In terms of stuff I've heard, which is just random snippets, is that West Ham are interested in Armando Broja. I know that's true. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there, whether that's a loan.
Are we entertaining that at all? What is the situation with Broja anyway? Did he purely not go on pre-season because he wasn't fit enough? Or
no, he didn't go because he wasn't fit enough. But past that, I don't really know what the situation is. I feel like it's mostly a play-it-by-ear situation with Broja because of the injury. But all I know is West Ham interested. I feel like Chelsea probably wouldn't want to sell him like right now. I feel like
we gave him a contract extension a year ago, so
yeah, that and also his stocks must be quite low after the injury. Like surely another season would help, but that's just like a small interesting thing. I know Chelsea still want to sell Conor Gallagher, like ideally, and I know West Ham are still interested, but only if Chelsea drop their asking price back down. So that'll be one to watch as the window goes on. If Chelsea are like, okay, let's try and move him on. He doesn't really fit. I wouldn't be surprised to see the asking price go back down. And I know Tottenham were interested, and I was told at the time that the reason they didn't bid when West Ham did is because they were focusing on their defence, and they've just signed Mickey van der Ven from Wolfsburg or whatever. So maybe they'll suddenly shift focus to Conor Gallagher now. That will be something to watch.
Would we accept offers from Spurs? Because I'm always like, they don't accept our offers, so we should not accept theirs.
I would be surprised, because also we're not really desperate to sell Gallagher whether we want to or not. We won't want to strengthen a rival, and also it's Tottenham. Like, you probably don't want to sell to them. And also, Gallagher's actually not a bad player. Like he
and
is
also,
decent,
I'm surprised if Gallagher would even want to go to Spurs, if I'm honest. But
yeah, well, I hope not. But yeah, to be honest, I don't think we'd sell to Spurs. And also, I don't think they're going to offer so much where we're like, we can't not accept this. I feel like they'd also stay around the 40 million mark and just sit there. So yeah, I think you're right. I got some random info today, which isn't really something. I don't know what I'd say, but Bashir Fofana is apparently very highly rated, like extremely. So a lot of people are seeing these strikers come in, but Chelsea still see.
He seems to have done quite well at Union Berlin, apparently.
Yeah, I saw I think he got 2 goals and an assist today in a friendly. But yeah, I was told that they fully expect him to come into the first team next season, despite all the strikers we're signing, that he's really, really highly rated among the board. So that's just an interesting thing to see. And another thing that I would never report, because it's like, I'm not saying it's going to happen, and it's been reported by others, but Redondo and Fabricio Diaz are 2 players that were mentioned to me specifically by a scout at Chelsea that they really heavily scouted and they really liked. So if we haven't moved from them yet, as far as I know, and I did ask about Fabricio Diaz a week ago, and I was told that we really like him, but we would, if we were to get him, we want to put him on loan to a Portuguese club that we're looking to buy for the multi-club model, which is taking a bit of time. So they don't want to buy a player and not know what to do with him and have him sitting around. So,
seems like we did that with Fofana in January, though.
Yeah, well, that's true. So hopefully they've learned.
I guess maybe they learned from that mistake. Fair enough.
Yeah, exactly. But
is there because just sorry to interrupt you, but in terms of all these loans where we're sending so many out, and not many of them have gone within the UK so far, which is why you're still unlimited. But in Europe, there's the limit, what is it, 7 or 8 now, of loans you can have. And that doesn't stop purely because it's multi-club. Now, if they're officially signed by Strasbourg, obviously it's different, like what could happen with Zakarian. But, you know, the Washington kid now, and Angelo Gabriel and Ugochukwu, like, how many players are we going to loan out? There is a limit to it. So it just seems like, do people know this? It seems like they don't.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like, I think we will be under the limit. It's 7. It's the 7 limit, but obviously, if you're club trained, then you're not part of the loan limit. So Amari Hutchinson, Charlie Webster, Dion Rankin, Sharman Lowe, none of them count towards it. So it's only if we put 7 of these new signings on loan in which we'd go over the limit. And obviously, it's fun to joke, but they definitely know about the limit. So Chelsea know a lot about
it. It is true. Luke actually makes a good point. It is only for over under 21s. And so many of ours are obviously under that. Yeah. No, it's a fair point. It is a fair point. Yeah. Is the decision on Ugochukwu isn't made yet whether he stays or goes, is it?
Well, it may have been. I have no idea. I haven't asked. It was weird because Pochettino said that the decision was made when we signed him. He was like, my information is that they will send him to a Strasbourg. But then a couple of days later, he was like, we'll have to wait and see or something. So even the manager.
So clearly he wasn't well informed.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess. One last thing I would like to touch on before we round this one out is, well, it was reported by Nizar. It isn't exactly super breaking news, obviously, as it was yesterday, and this doesn't really say or mean anything. But Nizar said that Chelsea are hopeful and Nkunku will only be out for weeks rather than at months. But he is a major out for Liverpool. Do you have any level of information on Nkunku's fitness? Because it's just typical us, isn't it? That he gets injured in the last preseason game and is now going to miss, probably the first 2 or 3 games? Just going to be annoying, isn't it?
No, I've no information on this on Nkunku's injury. I will say I really dislike, not to go into Nizar Kintella, but reports like this because it gives him such a way out. Chelsea are hopeful there'll be weeks. I mean, it's such.
It just seems like he didn't hear nothing. He just said something.
No, he didn't. He just I'm not going anyone, but it sounds like he just wanted to put a report out there and thought he'd get away with it. And to be fair, I mean, I doubt it would be months because he looked kind of fine after the game. Obviously, he isn't fine, but it didn't look like he was on crutches or anything. So I would lean towards the weeks out as well. But I have no reason to believe that. But it is classic Chelsea. Although, and I'm not happy. Obviously, I'm not happy it happened at all. But I'd love to see Chukwuemeka start against Liverpool. Just as like a small silver lining.
Well, the chances are he might have done anyway, considering against Dortmund he did. So
that's true. But I'm just really happy to see after last season how it was treated for him to kind of come back around and do really well. But it would be nice for him to score some goals because I know he has them in him and he keeps missing.
Yeah, he's been a bit unlucky so far on that. I do still think that he needs to. My issue with Chukwuemeka seems he's so big in frame, not quite like Ruben because he's not as wide, but obviously his height. Yeah. He doesn't seem to really know how to use that when he doesn't have the ball. Like it seems like our press on the Poch is already quite good, except they run past Chukwuemeka because it's like the ball's there, just fucking go there. But it just to me,
I need to look at that more.
It's the whole 10. Even when Nkunku played at a 10, we kind of seem to struggle to involve that position as much as we should.
Yeah, involved definitely. The pressing thing I need to look at because you've just said it, and I also saw Johan. I don't know if you know him on Twitter.
Yeah,
I saw him complaining about it when he was rewatching the game, Chukwuemeka specifically. So that's something to watch. I don't usually watch a game to see the pressing, but I should check that out. But yeah, I definitely agree. I think Chukwuemeka had a really good game about 2 games into preseason. He played as the 10, and I was really annoyed because I knew he wasn't a 10. But then about halfway through the first half, he started dropping deep to an 8. And then he got that goal. Do you remember where Cole passed it to him and then he ran through? So I think really, I don't know if Poch needs to realize this. Maybe he's giving the wrong instructions or the players just aren't doing what they should. But I think it's a 4-2-3-1, but just drop a bit deeper, pick up the ball. You're very good on the ball and bring it forward is what I'd hope happens in that upper 10 position for all of them, including Nkunku, because he's very good on the ball too. But yeah, I do agree. They're not really involved that much in the number 10. So we good to see
we do need to fix that because otherwise, what's the whole point of a 10? You might as well play a 4-3-3 then if you're not going to involve them. And we have so many 8s still, even though we let go of Mount, that it would be quite useful if we would use an 8. Although we don't really have a lone 6 profile as much. Even when we get Caicedo, I don't think he's the perfect lone 6 side. I'm not sure if you disagree with that, but seems to me be a bit more suited to the 6 with like another 6, and then sometimes Caicedo can go and Enzo will stay for a moment, rather than always being the deepest 6, because then he never has the license to go. But hey, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's about time we wrap this one up, which I haven't told you at all today. Poor on me. I keep forgetting this. Subscribe if you haven't already. Still over 300 people here, so that'd be massively appreciated. We're on the road to 20,000 subscribers. Every new subscriber counts. Hit that like button for me as well. Would be massively appreciated. Please do also check out Felix's YouTube channel. Link is down in the description as well as his Twitter account. Please subscribe to him. Please follow him for all your, as he obviously said, he is a fan that sometimes gets information and he posts it for you guys to know. And sometimes it comes on these streams where he says even a little bit more than he puts on Twitter. So there you go. Follow him and check out his YouTube channel for all sorts of news and analytics of Chelsea, I guess. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for watching. Up to Chelsea, upwards and onwards, and we will see you next time.